The boy didn't cry when he came home. That was the part that broke her. Crying she could have handled. Crying meant it still hurt on the surface. But Owen, 17 years old, 6 feet tall, the kind of quiet that people mistake for confidence, walked through the front door of his grandmother's house at 2:40 in the afternoon on a Thursday, set his violin case against the wall without a word, and went straight to his room. Nora Calloway heard the door. She was at the kitchen table, going through a pile of mail she'd been ignoring since Tuesday. She looked at the clock, checked it twice. His lesson at the Hartwell School of Music didn't end until 4. She found him sitting on the edge of his bed with his hands on his knees, staring at the floor the way men stare when they're deciding whether or not to feel something. "What happened?" "Nothing, Nana." "Owen." He didn't answer. She sat beside him. The bed creaked. Her left hip ached the way it always did when rain was coming. She waited. He said finally, in a voice that barely cleared the floor. "He told me to pack up my things. Said the program wasn't the right fit." She kept her hands very still in her lap. "Did he say why?" "He didn't have to." A long pause. "You know why, Nana. You know." She did know. She had known since the day she dropped him off at that building on King Street West, with its polished front doors and its framed photographs of alumni in recital halls, and watched the receptionist's eyes land on Owen's face and stay there a half-second too long before the smile snapped into place. She said nothing. She sat beside her grandson for 3 full minutes without speaking. Then she stood up, went to the front closet, and took her coat from the hook. "Nana, don't." She was already pulling it on. "Nana, it's not worth it." Nora Calloway buttoned every button unhurried, deliberate, the way she did everything. She picked up her keys. "You're coming with me." He almost didn't. He stood in the hallway of her house in Scarborough, Ontario. A house with a leaking eaves trough and a garden that had gone a little wild since her husband passed. And he looked at this 64-year-old woman in a gray wool coat and orthopedic walking shoes. And he must have decided that nothing good was going to come from following her across the city. But he got his jacket anyway. He always did what she asked. That was the thing about Owen. The Hartwell School of Music occupied the ground floor of a heritage building on King Street West. High ceilings, hardwood floors, a waiting area with leather chairs and framed black and white photographs of past students. The kind of place that had a particular smell, rosin and old wood and money. Derek Harlow, director of youth programs, was standing near the reception desk when they walked in, mid-40s. The kind of man who wore a blazer on a casual Thursday. He saw Owen first. His expression didn't change. Then he saw Nora. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Can I help you?" Nora walked to the desk without hurrying. She set her hands on the counter. "My grandson paid for 12 weeks of your ensemble program. He was dismissed today with 4 weeks remaining." Mr. Harlow's face arranged itself into something that resembled professional concern. "Yes, I'm afraid the program wasn't the right." "I'm not here to hear the phrase, 'right fit' again," Nora said. "I'm here for an honest reason. One real reason." Mr. Harlow tilted his head. A small, patient smile. Mrs. Calloway, with respect, these are complex pedagogical assessments. He plays at a grade 10 Royal Conservatory level, Nora said. He scored 91 on his last examination. He practiced 4 hours a day in my living room for 6 weeks before this program started. I have the sheet music. I have the exam results. What I don't have is a reason. A few students near the practice rooms had stopped moving. A young woman with a cello case on her back stood very still near the far wall. Someone whispered something. Mr. Harlow stepped around the desk. He came closer than he needed to. The move was deliberate. "Mrs. Calloway, I understand you're upset, but decisions about program fit are made by professional instructors with years of experience, not by family members in waiting areas." He glanced at Owen. "Your grandson has potential. I'm sure he'll find an appropriate program elsewhere. There are excellent community programs in," he paused just barely, "in his area." Nora looked at him. She was a full head shorter. She didn't step back. "His area," she said. The way she said it, flat and precise, made the receptionist stop typing. Mr. Harlow's smile thinned. "I didn't mean anything by that. Then say what you did mean, Nora said. We'll wait. He straightened. His jaw tightened. He was the kind of man who wasn't accustomed to being made to wait for anything, least of all by a 64-year-old woman in orthopedic shoes who smelled faintly of rosemary and hand cream. He turned to a junior instructor standing nearby. Brendan, can you show these folks to the exit? Nora didn't move. You won't refund the remaining 4 weeks? Mr. Harlow looked at the ceiling briefly, the way people do when they're performing patients. Our refund policy is in the enrollment agreement. Your family chose to sign it. I see. Nora nodded once. Then she looked at the young woman with the cello case near the wall. She looked at the 2 students who'd appeared in the hallway doorway. She looked at Owen, who was standing 3 feet behind her with his hands in his jacket pockets, and his face doing that thing it did when he was trying not to feel anything. She looked back at Mr. Harlow. My name is Nora Calloway. I want you to remember it. Mr. Harlow smiled. Not kindly. I'm sure I will. She picked up her handbag and left. Owen followed. The door closed behind them with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. What nobody in that building knew, what nobody on King Street West or in the lobby of that heritage building with its polished floors knew, was who Nora Calloway actually was. She was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in 1960. Her father played piano in a Baptist church every Sunday and taught her to read music before she could read words. By 14, she had been accepted to the Nova Scotia Youth Orchestra. By 17, she was playing first violin. By 22, she had a performance certificate from the Glenn Glendon Conservatory of Music. The real one, the one in London, England, and a spot in the Ottawa Chamber Orchestra that she held for 11 years. The Globe and Mail reviewed one of her performances in 1991. The critic, a man named Graham Tate, who was not known for generosity, wrote, Calloway plays with an authority that silences a room without effort. There is no performance here. There is only music, and the woman who understands it completely. She left the orchestra in 1994. Not because she had to, because her husband Raymond was diagnosed with ALS that February, and she made a decision in the hallway of a Toronto hospital that she never once questioned. She cut the news clipping from the Globe and put it in a shoebox under the bed. She folded her concert blacks and gave them to a neighbor. She packed her violin in its case and put it in the hall closet. She didn't touch it for 29 years. She raised her daughter Alicia alone. When Alicia married and had Owen, and then got very sick with something that took 2 years to diagnose and another 2 years to treat, Nora drove to Hamilton 3 times a week, cooked, cleaned, sat with the boy after school, and at some point became less of a grandmother and more of the steady ground Owen stood on. Owen had inherited something. That was obvious to everyone except the people at Hartwell. He'd started picking out melodies on Nora's piano at age 6. By 10, he was asking about her violin. She told him the case was broken. He knew she was lying, but never said so. At 13, he saved his own money. Birthday money, snow shoveling money, 2 summers of lawn cutting money, and bought himself a second-hand instrument from a shop in Kensington Market. He taught himself YouTube tutorials, library books, then a community program at the Scarborough Arts Council. Then a letter came from Hartwell saying he'd placed in the top 15% of their entrance evaluation. Nora had read that letter 4 times. She didn't say anything. She helped him buy the sheet music he needed. She sat in the car for 20 minutes after dropping him off on King Street that first day. She didn't go in. She knew what those rooms felt like. She knew exactly what they could do to a person who walked in carrying hope and walked out carrying something heavier. She had reasons. But she went home and made dinner and didn't say any of them. The night after she walked into Hartwell and walked back out, Nora sat at her kitchen table with her tea and her mail, and the understanding that something was going to have to happen next. She didn't know what it was. She was 64 years old. Her hip hurt. Her savings were what they were. She didn't have connections anymore, or if she did, they were 30 years old and made of cobwebs. But she knew that Owen had gone home and put his violin back in its case. She knew the case was sitting by the wall in his room and that he hadn't opened it. She knew because she passed his door at midnight and heard nothing. She went to the hall closet. She stood in front of it for a long time. The hinges were a little stiff. The door made a sound it didn't used to make. Inside, on the top shelf behind the extra blankets and a box of Raymond's old tax records, was a black case with 2 tarnished silver clasps. She took it down. She didn't open it that night. She brought it to the kitchen table and set it in front of her, and drank the rest of her tea and looked at it. Then she went to bed. She opened it in the morning. The rosin on the bow had dried. The strings needed replacing. The shoulder rest was cracked. The instrument itself was fine. Better than fine. It was a 1973 Degani, the one Raymond had saved for 2 years to buy her for their 5th anniversary. It had survived a lot. She restrung it herself. She went to Long and McQuaid on Bloor Street and bought a new block of rosin and a new shoulder rest. She asked the young man behind the counter if they still did instrument service. He said yes. She said, "What's the wait time for a bow rehair?" He said about a week. She left it with him. She didn't tell Owen any of this. 2 days after Hartwell, a woman named Deborah Lane called. Deborah ran the classical programming committee for the Scarborough Arts Council. She'd heard something. Scarborough was not large, in the ways that mattered. And she was calling, she said, just to check in. Nora told her the short version. Deborah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Nora, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been trying to get someone on our guest faculty for the Spring Youth Showcase for 3 months. The person I had lined up pulled out. I know this is a lot to ask. What's the question, Deb? Would you consider giving a master class?" Nora was quiet. "Just 1 session, 2 hours. I've got 14 kids, 12 to 17. Some of them are very good. All of them need someone who actually knows what they're doing." Nora looked at the hall closet. She called back the next morning. Meanwhile, Derek Harlow was having a very good week. Hartwell's spring enrollment had opened, and the numbers were strong. He posted a short video on the school's Instagram page. A highlights reel of ensemble rehearsals. Well lit, well scored, professionally edited. It got strong engagement. He followed it with a post about their commitment to musical excellence and community partnership. He didn't mention Owen. He didn't mention Nora. He had, in fact, already forgotten her name. Nora picked up her bow from Long and McQuaid on a Saturday morning. She drove home. She made coffee. She sat in the chair beside the window where the light came in good in the mornings, and she played a scale. Her fingers were stiff. That was expected. Her bow arm felt wrong. That was also expected. She played the scale again, and again, and then a third time, slower. On the 4th pass, something shifted. Muscle memory is not a metaphor. It is a literal physical thing, stored in tissue and tendon and the small, precise pathways of the nervous system. The body remembers what the mind has tried to put away. Her left hand found the position before her brain instructed it to. The bow drew across the D string, and the sound that came out was not a 64-year-old woman playing after a 29-year absence. It was something older than that, something that hadn't changed. She played for 2 hours that morning. She didn't stop for more than a few seconds at a time. Owen heard it. He was downstairs when it started. He thought, at first, that she had put on a recording. He stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened. Then something in the sound, something that no recording has, a kind of warmth that lives in the room with you, not through a speaker, told him it wasn't a recording. He sat on the bottom step and didn't move for 40 minutes. When she came downstairs, he was still sitting there. He didn't say anything for a long time. He looked at her the way you look at someone when you realize you've been living with a version of them that wasn't the whole truth. "Nana." She poured herself a glass of water. "Why didn't you tell me?" She thought about that. "Because it wasn't yours to carry," she said. The master class was held on a Tuesday evening in the main hall of the Scarborough Arts Council on Birchmount Road. 14 chairs, 14 music stands, 14 young people between the ages of 12 and 17, some with instruments that cost more than the car outside, some with instruments that had been through 4 previous owners and showed every mile. Nora arrived early. She wore a navy blazer she hadn't worn since Raymond's last good year. She carried her Dagani in its case. She did not introduce herself as anything other than her name. She spent the first 20 minutes just listening. She had each student play a short passage of their choice. She said nothing while they played. She didn't nod encouragingly or write on a clipboard. She listened the way someone listens when they actually need to hear. Then she walked to the first chair. She made one adjustment to the boy's bow hold. "1," she said. "Try it now." He played 4 bars. The difference was audible to everyone in the room. She moved to the next student. A girl, maybe 14, tense across the shoulders the way young players get when they're performing instead of playing. Nora said, "You're thinking about what it sounds like. Stop. Think about what the phrase needs to say, and let your arm decide how to say it." The girl blinked. "Just try it." She did. What came out of that instrument was so different from what had come before that a boy 3 chairs down let out a breath that was almost a word. Nora worked her way down the row. She was not soft. She was not the kind of teacher who qualifies everything. She said what she heard and what it needed to be, and the kids, the good ones, leaned in like she was telling them something they had been waiting years to be told. At the 90-minute mark, Deborah, who had been standing near the back wall trying not to interfere, stepped forward. Could I ask you to play something? For them?" Nora looked at the 14 faces. She sat down in the empty chair at the front. She rosined her bow once. She settled the instrument under her chin. She played the Adagio from Bach's Sonata No. 1 in G minor. Unaccompanied violin. 3 minutes and 40 seconds of music that has no place to hide, no orchestra behind it, no accompaniment. Just the instrument and the person and the silence. Nobody in that room moved. There is a specific quality to silence that only certain performances produce. It's not the silence of an audience being polite. It's the silence of people who have stopped thinking, stopped checking their phones in their heads, stopped being anywhere else. 14 young musicians sat in that hall on Birchmount Road and simply ceased, for 3 minutes and 40 seconds, to be anywhere but there. When she finished, one of the youngest students, a 12-year-old boy with a second-hand instrument and no formal training beyond 6 months at a community program, began to cry. Not loudly. He just put his hand over his mouth and looked at the floor, and his shoulders shook. Nora did not make it into a moment. She set down her bow. She looked at the boy. She said, "That's the right response." Someone had been recording. 3 different phones, in fact, because teenagers and their phones move faster than any intention. A girl near the door had started her phone when Nora first positioned the instrument. Something in the posture telling her something was about to happen. The boy beside her had started his 30 seconds later. A third student, sitting closest to the front, had his camera running almost from the start. None of them posted it that night. They didn't plan it that way. They just didn't. They went home and watched it themselves, and showed it to a parent or a sibling, and the footage sat on their phones for 36 hours before the girl near the door posted a 12-second clip to her TikTok at 11 in the morning on a Thursday with the caption, "My music teacher brought someone in last night. Genuinely cannot stop thinking about this." By that afternoon, 40,000 views. By Friday morning, 600,000. The longer clips followed. The boy with the second-hand instrument had the steadiest footage, 8.5 minutes of uninterrupted video that captured not just the Bach, but the entire last hour of the masterclass, including the moment Nora told the tense girl to stop thinking about sound and let her arm speak, and the sound that came out of that girl's violin afterward. The comments arrived by the thousands. "Who is she? Someone please find out who she is." The way she listens, you can see it on her face. She's actually hearing them. I've been playing violin for 11 years, and that correction she made to the bow hold in the first 30 seconds is something no one has ever explained to me that clearly. I'm crying, and I don't know why. This is what a real teacher sounds like. The clip reached a music journalist at the Toronto Star named Phil Arsenault. who tracked down Deborah Lane through the Scarborough Arts Council's website. Deborah gave him Nora's number with her permission. He called on a Friday afternoon. "Mrs. Calloway, I'd like to write about you." Nora said, "There's not much to write about. I'm a 64-year-old woman from Scarborough who taught a class." He said, "The Globe and Mail ran a review of your playing in 1991. Graham Tate called you the finest violinist he'd reviewed in a decade." She was quiet. "I think there's a story here," he said. "There is," she said. "But it's not about me. It's about those 14 kids and a program that doesn't have enough funding and a boy in Scarborough who needed someone to tell him he was good enough." Arsenault was quiet on his end. Then he said, "Can I write about both?" she said. "Write about Owen first." The article ran the following Wednesday. Phil Arsesart seen the careful who talks the same question 4 different ways before he decides which answer is true. He wrote about Owen, his practice regimen, his self-taught foundation, his entrance assessment at Hartwell, his dismissal. He quoted the enrollment agreement. He called Hartwell for comment. Derek Harlow's communications director sent a 2-paragraph statement about the school's commitment to equitable access. Phil included the statement and then placed, directly below it, Owen's Royal Conservatory exam result. He wrote about Nora second, the Halifax childhood, the youth orchestra, the Glenn Glendon certificate, the Ottawa Chamber Orchestra, the Globe Review, Raymond, the closet. The headline read, "She put down her violin for her husband. She picked it up for her grandson, 22,000 shares in the first 6 hours." The comments on the Star's website crashed their comment system for 40 minutes, but not everyone was pleased. Derek Harlow read the article on his phone at 7:43 in the morning. He read it twice. Then he called his communications director. The school issued a second statement. This one was longer. It cited the program's diverse enrollment. It pointed to 3 students by name who had gone on to professional careers. It said that individual placement decisions were based on complex evaluations that a single news article could not adequately capture. It said that Hartwell remained committed to identifying and nurturing exceptional musical talent, regardless of background. It did not mention Owen by name. It did not mention Nora. It said in its final paragraph, "We wish all former students the best in their musical journeys." The internet did not receive this well. Music educators from across Canada posted responses. A professor from the University of Toronto Faculty of Music wrote a long thread on Twitter about the documented history of racial bias in classical music conservatory admissions. A former Hartwell student, white, female, now teaching in Vancouver, posted a video of herself saying she had personally witnessed Derek Harlow tell a black student that the ensemble's sound needed to be cohesive in a context that left no ambiguity about what he meant. 3 other former Hartwell students came forward with written accounts, each one different. Each one with the same shape. Hartwell's spring enrollment dropped 34% in the 2 weeks following the article. Derek Harlow did not appear in another school Instagram video. None of this was the part that stayed with people. What stayed was a 17-second clip that someone pulled from the longer masterclass footage and posted separately. In it, Nora is standing in front of the tense girl with the shoulder tension, the one she told to stop performing and start speaking. In the clip, Nora doesn't say anything. She simply raises her bow, not to demonstrate technique, not to show off, not with any performance at all, and she draws it across the string once, producing a single, long note that is so full and so certain it feels less like music than like a statement. Then she looks at the girl. "That's what's already inside you," she says. "You just have to trust it." The girl's face in that moment, the recognition of something being given to her that she didn't know she was missing, was the thing people couldn't stop watching. The clip was viewed 9 million times. The comments were the same in 100 different words. That's what a real teacher looks like. That's what it feels like when someone sees you. I've been playing for 30 years and I needed to hear this today. This woman is what music is supposed to be. Nora didn't see any of it on the day it happened. She was at the Scarborough Arts Council kitchen with Deborah and a thermos of coffee going over the budget for the Spring Youth Showcase, which was now, suddenly, oversubscribed. Owen showed her the clip that evening. He handed her his phone without saying anything. She watched it, watched herself, her face doing the thing it does when she's not performing anything. She handed the phone back. She said, "She's going to be very good." That was all. That wasn't quite all. 2 mornings after the article ran, a woman in a gray blazer appeared at the Scarborough Arts Council's front desk and asked to speak to whoever ran their youth programming. Deborah came out. The woman introduced herself as the Director of Community Partnerships at the Royal Conservatory of Music. She said, "I'd like to discuss something." What followed was not simple. Nothing with institutions is ever simple. There were meetings. There were proposals. There were people in rooms saying the word partnership in different tones of voice until the word stopped meaning anything. Nora was asked to attend some of these meetings. She did, in the navy blazer, with the Degani in its case beside her chair, and she said very little until she had something specific to say, and then she said it clearly and did not repeat herself. What emerged after 6 weeks of this was a formal program. 6 months of structured mentorship, fully funded, open to youth musicians aged 12 to 20 in the Scarborough, North York, and Etobicoke communities. No audition for entry, no fees. Assessment at the end of the first month, not to eliminate but to place. Instruction from working musicians. Nora agreed to lead the string cohort on Thursday evenings. They called it the Open Chair Program. Owen was not in it. He was, by the time it launched, enrolled in a different conservatory program, one that had reached out to Deborah the week after the article, whose admissions director had sent a personal email that did not contain the phrase "right fit" anywhere in its 3 paragraphs. He came to the open chair sessions anyway. He came as a senior student. He helped the younger ones with their instruments set up, their bow holds, the fundamentals. He showed up 20 minutes early and stayed 20 minutes late. Nora watched him one Thursday evening from across the room. He was crouched beside a 13-year-old with a stubborn, shifting problem, demonstrating the movement slowly, talking the kid through it with the patience of someone who had once had to teach himself the same thing. The kid tried it, got it wrong. Owen demonstrated again. The kid tried again, got it partially right. Owen said something that made the kid laugh and then try it a 3rd time. The 3rd time, it clicked. Nora turned away and looked at the wall and took a breath. Her husband Raymond had said something to her once. In the hospital, near the end, she'd been sitting beside him, and the room had been quiet, and he'd taken her hand and said, "You'll find another reason." She hadn't believed him. She hadn't argued. She'd just held his hand and let him believe that she would. He was right. He was, as usual, infuriatingly right. At the Open Chair Program's first performance showcase, in May, 23 young musicians took the stage of the George Harvey Collegiate Auditorium. Borrowed from the school, chairs arranged in a rough semicircle, standing room at the back filled with family and a number of people who had found their way there from the article or the simple fact that word travels in a neighborhood when something true is happening. Owen played last. He chose a movement from Vivaldi. He played it the way someone plays a thing they have earned. When he finished, Nora stood up from her chair in the front row. She didn't look around to see if others were standing. She just stood. But the room stood with her, all of it, and the sound of that was something. After, in the hallway, a man in his 50s, one of the parents, stopped her. He had tears on his face that he wasn't trying to hide. He said, "My daughter is 12. She's been playing for 3 years, and she's never had a teacher who actually listened to her. You listened to her tonight. I could hear it in how she played. I could see it on her face." Nora said, "She has a lot in her. She just needs to be in a room where that's allowed to come out." The man shook his head, like he couldn't quite process what he was hearing. He said, "How did you know? How do you see it so quickly?" Nora thought about that. She thought about a hall closet and a cedar case and a bow waiting to be rehaired. She thought about Raymond's face in a doorway, holding a magazine, laughing. She thought about a 17-year-old boy sitting on the bottom of a staircase, listening. She said, "You don't stop knowing things just because you stop doing them. You carry what you learned. It waits." She picked up her case and went to find Owen. He was in the corner of the hallway talking to the 13-year-old, whose shifting had finally clicked. They were both laughing about something. Owen saw her coming and straightened up, still smiling. "Ready?" she said. He picked up his case. They walked out into the May evening together. The streetlights were on. There was a smell of cut grass from somewhere. Owen said, "Thank you for coming with me that day." She said, "You came with me." He thought about that. Then he held the door for her, the way Raymond used to, and they walked to the car. If this story found you, I want to know about it. Leave a comment and tell me about someone you underestimated, or someone who surprised you by not staying down. I read every one of those. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that what you carry inside you doesn't have an expiry date. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time, because next week I'm bringing you a story about a retired firefighter in Northern Ontario who spent 20 years believing the worst day of his life had ruined him. What he discovered in a community woodshop at 67 years old will change the way you think about second chances. Don't miss it. The things you built inside yourself. The discipline, the patience, the love for the thing you gave up. They don't disappear. They wait for the moment when someone needs them more than you needed to keep them hidden. Standing up doesn't always look like a fight. Sometimes it looks like a woman in a gray wool coat walking back into a room she left 30 years ago, rosening her bow like she never set it down.